Welcome to the Morbid Codex. Tonight, we dive into another episode of the shadowy side of Singapore, where ordinary places turn into nightmares and strange, unexplainable events unfold. Prepare yourself for the unnerving silence of Singapore's haunted streets, late-night encounters, and eerie military bases. I've been driving a taxi for almost 15 years, and I've seen my fair share of odd passengers. But this night was different. It was just past midnight, and I was driving around one of those ulu, out-of-the-way areas in the far north of Singapore. I was planning to head home when I spotted a woman standing at the side of the road, waving for a taxi. She was dressed in white, simple, nothing flashy, but she looked cold, and there was something about her that seemed off. But I didn't think much of it. People are strange at night. She climbed into the back seat and asked to be dropped off at an estate in Woodlands. I nodded, turned on the meter, and drove off. The roads were quiet, eerily quiet, and all I could hear was the hum of the engine. After a while, I tried making small talk, but she didn't reply. It was like she wasn't even there. Glancing at the rearview mirror, I saw her staring blankly out of the window. Fine, I thought. Some passengers prefer to keep to themselves. When I finally reached her destination, I turned around to let her know we had arrived, but the back seat was empty. My heart raced as I jumped out of the car to check. I even opened the doors, hoping I was just losing my mind, but there was no one there. I checked the road, the surroundings, nothing. I reported the incident to my taxi company, and they said I wasn't the first. That same spot, other drivers had picked up passengers who had the same description as the lady that I picked up that night, who vanished before they reached their destination. Since that incident, I decided against driving at night. I spoke to my wife about this, and she also advised that I should not drive nights anymore. It had been a long day at the office. Deadlines were looming, and I had been working late into the night to finish a certain deadline in a project. The hum of the fluorescent lights, the soft tap of my keyboard, and the occasional groan from the air conditioning were my only companions. By the time I finally packed up, it was close to midnight. Halfway home, I heard something. It was faint at first, so soft that I thought it was just part of the music playing in my ears. But when I pulled out my earphones, it became unmistakable. Wei Han. Wei Han? Someone was calling my name. My heart leapt in my chest. I spun around, my eyes scanning the empty street behind me, but no one was there. I laughed it off nervously, convincing myself it was just my imagination. After all, it had been a long day. Maybe I was just tired, hearing things. But as I continued walking, I heard it again, clearer this time. A woman's voice, gentle but unmistakable. Wei Han, come here. The hairs on the back of my neck stood up. I couldn't see anyone. The street was completely empty, the stillness unsettling. My instincts told me to leave, quickly. I shoved my hands into my pockets and sped up, not daring to look back. When I finally reached my flat, I felt a wave of relief wash over me. I quickly climbed the stairs and opened the door, expecting the usual warm light to greet me. But instead, the entire flat was dark. My mum always waited up for me. Why hadn't she left the lights on? I stepped inside, and the moment I did, my mum rushed out of her room, her face pale with worry. Why are you home? She asked. What do you mean? I asked with confusion. I just got back. She shook her head, her eyes wide with fear. You came home earlier. You knocked on the door and said you wouldn't be coming home tonight and left hurriedly. I thought you were in a rush to complete your work, so I didn't call or text you afterwards, my mum said. A chill ran down my spine. I could see the fear in her eyes, and my own heart raced. Something had come to our house, pretending to be me, But who? Or worse, what was it? My mum insisted we burn incense that night, offering prayers for protection. Now, every time I pass the street where I heard my name, I can't help but glance over my shoulder. Thankfully, I never heard or seen anything since. Serving in the army wasn't exactly my idea of a good time, but every guy in Singapore had to do it. I was stationed at Nee Soon Camp for my national service, a place that everyone said had its fair share of spooky stories. I brushed them off as superstitions or exaggerated tales made to scare the new guys, but that was before I experienced something for myself. It was a night like any other, humid, still, and suffocatingly quiet. My camp buddy Daryl and I were assigned to guard duty, and we were just doing our rounds near one of the old, less patrolled parts of the camp. The place always gave me the creeps at night, with its dimly lit paths and shadowy corners, but I wasn't about to admit that to anyone. Around 3 a.m., the infamous witching hour, we were walking near the fence line, talking quietly to keep ourselves awake. Everything was still, save for the occasional rustling of leaves in the wind. As we passed by one of the larger trees, I felt it, a cold, sudden brush against the back of my neck. I flinched, instinctively swiping at the spot. I thought it was just a mosquito or a cockroach, but then I heard it. A laugh. Not Daryl's laugh. This was soft, high-pitched, and unmistakably eerie. I stopped in my tracks, my heart hammering in my chest. Slowly, I looked up at the tree above us. We couldn't see anything. It was pitch black. But I was taking no chance. I grabbed Daryl's arm, and he turned to look at me. He didn't say anything. He didn't need to. We both took a step back, and the laughter grew louder, more menacing. We turned and ran. We didn't stop until we reached the guard post, our hearts racing, our breath shallow. Neither of us said a word. We didn't have to. We both knew what we heard wasn't normal. The next morning, I asked one of the older sergeants if he'd ever heard of anything strange happening on night duty. He looked at me with a grim expression and simply said, "That's why we don't patrol that area alone at night." The sounds we heard in the tree, we weren't the first ones to hear it, but I swore it'd be my last. From that night on, I always stayed far away from that part of the camp, especially after dark, because once you've heard that laughter, you will never forget it. Thanks for joining us on this chilling journey through Singapore's darkest corners. These stories remind us that even in the most ordinary places, there are mysteries we can't explain. If you enjoyed these tales and want to hear more, don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit the notification bell.